the setting looks different because it's like 4 degrees outside. So if I seem cranky, it's because I'm not allowed to smoke inside anymore, thanks to my wonderful, beautiful boy. So no cigar, which probably is going to mean cranky Collin for an episode or the next whatever 6 months of episodes, thanks to living in wonderful Chicagoland. But we got a lot of political topics to cover. We've got awesome guests, so I'm going to try to keep a positive attitude. We'll see how long it lasts. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. I don't know. But speaking of guests, we've got State Representative Jed Davis from the 75th District. You've been there since 2023. Former village trustee in Newark. You're also the board president. I didn't know this of Parkview Christian Academy in Yorkville. And you've got your own, I think you've got your own podcast now. You got a bunch of stuff you do on your side, and I've given you a lot of praise on these podcasts. So I'm glad to finally have you here with us. What's going on, Jed?
Hey, I love being here. Actually, I'm a junkie. I watch you guys about every week, so it's fun being on this side of the camera.
I always love when we hear somebody say that because it translates in my head to, yeah, they have no life, and that's why they're willing to watch this dumb podcast every week.
Yeah,
but
I'm
we
sure
do
you're
appreciate it.
getting the click throughs on your emails. I'm like, he's seeing I clicked through about 5 or 6 times. So
No, we appreciate it. It's keeps us going. It's what I don't even know what episode we're on anymore, Lane. You could probably tell me. It's over 100. That's all I remember. Speaking of guests, Sharon is a returning guest. Thanks to Sharon for jumping in. We had another guest who was going to join us who canceled last minute, but Sharon moved around her schedule. So thank you for doing that, Sharon. We're glad to have you with us. You're a policy expert, former Palatine Township supervisor, and a police officer. And it seems like every week that we have crime as a topic, we get Sharon as a guest. So I'm sure we're going to have your thoughts when we get to crime plus other stuff. Plus, you see the puppies in the background, one of our favorite puppy mamas. How you doing, Sharon?
Good.
We got to see. I think about between Michael and Chris. We talk about puppies. Would we trust either of them with a puppy? I don't know.
Wow.
I mean, Michael's more responsible, but he's on the road constantly. And I don't know. Chris is a cat person, so would we trust him with a dog?
That's true. That's why I don't have a dog, because I feel like I'm never home. Wouldn't really work out.
Listen, Collin, you trust me with field strategy because I'm a cat person. There isn't a competent field guy in this state, in this country, who isn't a cat person. And if you think about that, you think about all the field experts, every single one of them has a cat. I guarantee it.
Really?
Maybe it's because maybe it's because they're never home. I don't know. But Abe, our data wizard, I mean, he's a cat guy and he does, all of our data and technology. So you might be onto something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. All right, well, let's get into the meaty topics. If you've been paying attention, there was an election in Tennessee this week, and both parties are trying to point to that election as either a positive or a negative. There was a post by Politico Illinois this week talking about how it's jolted the Illinois Republican Party, with quotes from a number of people who have talked about how this is a really bad omen for Republicans. What they're talking about is Trump won this district by 22 points this year, whereas the Republican this time around in the special election only won it by 9. I think we can all point to a number of reasons why that's the case, and certainly feel free to do so. But this is sort of a general topic for all of us on, is there something we can learn here? Is there something we should be doing differently for 2026? Certainly, if you look at the election results of the last few months, there have been some warning signs for Republicans, and we've talked about it on previous episodes. So we'll let our guests go first on this one, but just curious if you guys have thoughts on, is there anything we should be looking towards in 2026 that we ought to do differently in Illinois? What are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Jed.
We need to get our act together. It scares the bejesus out of me, to be honest, because I don't know who jolted or who got jolted, but there's no communications. I'm also the chairman of the Kendall County Republican Party, and it's not like we're talking about this as a party. I'm a member of the House Republican Caucus, and we've never had a conversation on any of these elections in the last few months. So I'm not saying that we need to have those talks, but what I'm suggesting is we're not having them. So we're not even having the discussion of what is happening, why is it happening, how should we be responding as a party and a caucus, and you've got issues that people are feeling. And I see their topics later on in this episode, and what has been happening is incredible on many fronts across the world, but I feel like we've forgotten about the people that actually live on our streets and what is really resonating with their hearts. And right now, unfortunately, in my opinion, the Dems are winning that message war, which is sad.
Well, and Jed, I appreciate you're clearly somebody who's put together an agenda on a podcast before, respecting the agenda. I mean, we're going to talk cost of living in a little
Yeah.
bit. We're going to talk crime in a little bit. So that's sort of what you're hinting at. But I appreciate you being so kind to our agenda. But for anybody who's listening or watching and maybe wasn't sure what he was saying there, that's what he's referencing, and we'll talk more in depth on those soon.
I go back to when, in the 1990s, when we actually talked to people and we went knocking on doors. If somebody said that they were going to vote for somebody, we went to their door on election day to make sure they got out, and we harassed them until they did. It's the epitome of laziness now, because of all the technology we have. Everyone says, "Oh, we'll just email them. We'll do this." Nothing works better than that face to face and someone knocking on your door, making you feel guilty to get your butt out there. I worked on a campaign. My very first campaign I ever worked on was in Des Plaines, and we knocked on every door of a person that said they were going to vote for him. And guess what? We cleared. The guy won just by huge margins over three other candidates. So we just don't do that basic everyday, knocking on door stuff anymore. And it's because it's just people are lazy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we just got through petition season, and I know Chris and Michael can bemoan this. We've talked about it on these episodes, how difficult every year it gets harder and harder to get petition signatures, to get people to go out there and do it, even when you offer to pay them, which obviously they should be doing it because they actually care about these elections. But even when offering the money, it's getting harder and harder to get the Republicans, the grassroots, the conservatives to get out there and work. And we hear it all the time, like the grassroots. And that's, yeah, but like you got to do more than just post on social media, or we're not going to win just with three more Facebook posts or X tweets or whatever that you want to do.
Frankly, I think Republicans caught a break here in Tennessee. A lot of the Democrat wound licking that's going on right now, at least from common sense people in the Democratic Party, is that 20 years ago, the Democrats would have looked at a special election in an R+10 district and said, we need to nominate a moderate. We didn't nominate a conservative Democrat in the Southern district, someone who has common sense policy positions, even bucks the party on a number of issues. But the Democratic Party ultimately nominated a very progressive candidate. It was supported by some very, very progressive people. They had AOC and Pramila Jayapal come in the last week. They also had Al Gore come in, which I thought was a really strong move. I mean, it was. This is Tennessee we're talking about. I thought that was a very interesting move that the Democratic Party made. But at the end of the day, I think we could be talking about a worst case scenario had the Democrats actually went back to their old playbook and we're going to nominate somebody that actually reflects this district. We're going to nominate somebody that's a common sense person in this district. It was a high turnout election. It could have came back to bite the Republicans in the butt. Ultimately, it didn't. But even though the Republicans caught a break here, they shouldn't ignore the lesson from all this, and that is this is a district that Trump won by over 20 points. And there's no reason why a Democrat should be coming within 7 or 6 points of a Republican district in the South at this point. Some people have said that if this was a 2018 special election, Republicans would have lost it either way, and that may be true, and that may be a testament more so towards how bad realignment has gotten, and not many people are willing to cross over their tickets for the other side as much anymore. But either way, Republicans need to come away looking at this like, listen, we're underperforming Trump by 13 plus points in this district. And if we're underperforming Trump by 13 plus points in districts in 2026, and obviously it's not going to happen in every district, but if you have districts where it's happening, you can't expect to even come close to holding the House in 2026. You actually need to put in a lot more work, and you can't rely on millions and millions and millions of dollars to come into congressional districts next year, because the NRCC is going to be a lot more stringent about how they're going to be doling out those funds. They've got incumbents that they need to hold, and they're not going to be looking at a lot of these districts. So it's something that we as a party need to be looking at very seriously.
Michael, any good thoughts? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of this, it's a special election, right? And the people that show up for a special election are different than the people that show up in a presidential or a midterm. So I think one of the things that this shows us is who's excited about voting and who isn't, right? I mean, there was a lot of this, it wasn't because it's not that people, I mean, there was probably some that voted for Trump in this district in November of 2024 that maybe voted for this Democrat in the special election. I'm sure there's some of that. But a lot of this, 13% swing from, Trump winning the district by 22 points and then the Republican candidate in the special election winning by 9 is because there was a lot of people that just didn't show, right? That were Republican voters. And that's something we need to be focused on, for this next cycle is getting out those low propensity Republicans because there's going to be a lot of people that voted in 2024 that aren't going to vote in 2026. It's just natural. That's the way the world works on both sides. But it seems like we have more issues with that low propensity voter at the moment than the Democrats do.
Yeah, there's an enthusiasm gap for sure, which is something we absolutely have to work on. I think if you look at the Politico post and some of the quotes from some of the Republicans or former Republicans, who, many of which sort of go back to their tried and true, it's all Trump's fault sort of narrative. And then you see the follow-up from Illinois Review where they say they're out of touch and, if we just were more like Trump, we'd win. It's evolved into exactly what always happens in Illinois. There seems to be this 2D view of politics in this state from Republicans where it's always or either turnout or propensity. Either we're going to get the base out and run up, turn out and run up the score, or we're going to be, reaching out and only running moderates and being anti-Trump and trying to get the middle. Until we realize that you have to do both to win elections, we're never going to win in the state. And you saw it. If you read that Politico post and then read Illinois Review's follow-up, you see exactly the same fight we've been having for as long as I've been involved in politics in this state. You have one group that says it's all about turnout. It's just not just the low propensity Republicans, but more importantly, get those Trump voters who aren't really Republicans, but they show up for Trump. Get them to show up in an off-year election. Guess what? That's true. That's accurate. That's one of the 3 things we need to do to win. But it's just one of the 3 things. Then you see the second group, and they're like, well, we need to get focused on persuasion and winning over maybe more suburban, more moderate, more urban voters who are maybe not willing to vote for Republicans as much. Well, yeah, we got to do that too. No one's talking about the third group, which is former Republicans who are still fiscally conservative, but just don't like Trump, so they've left the party. We got to win that group too. We got to do all 3 things. You got to chew gum and walk at the same time to win elections. It's not an either-or scenario, but until Republicans figure that out, we're going to keep having the same stupid, useless fight. Both sides are right. You're both right. We need to do efforts to turn out the base and get those Trump voters to show up. And we need to do persuasion efforts to win people to our sides who are independent, moderate, soft Democrat. We've got to do both of those things to win. But we got this side screaming they're right, this side screaming they're right, and we're going to go lose some more elections because neither side will work with the other.
Yeah, amen. We need to work. We just need to work. To Chris's point, I've been talking to some congressional candidates trying to dip into the RNC coffers. And I'm like, look, this is a 20-some point Dem district. Forget about it. You're alone. If you want to win, you need to do the work. Like, get out and do the work and knock the doors and communicate with the voters. And the base will likely show we have outperformed Dems in the last 2022 and 24 election. From a percentage basis, more of us have showed up than them. So get to the VG, the people that vote general elections, and get your message to them. But it takes work, and you can't rely on central committees, wherever they are, to be the backbone of it's your campaign. So get out and do the work.
Well, I think that's always the thing. Everyone just expects someone else to do the work, someone else to put in the effort. There isn't someone else. Just to be clear, there is not someone else. If you don't do it, nobody's going to do it. Whoever it is that's watching this or listening to this, if you don't do it, it's not going to happen. I'm sick and tired. The number of calls and meetings and Zooms that I'm on a daily basis where I've got to tell candidates or clients, yeah, X, Y, and Z need to happen. The party needs to do those things if we're going to win. The grassroots needs to do these things if we're going to win, but they're not going to happen. I'm sick of having that conversation. I would love to be able to say, yeah, we need to do X, Y, and Z to win. And there are hardworking people who are actually trying to make it happen. But so far, that isn't happening. And if there's a lesson to take out of Tennessee and Virginia and New Jersey and maybe a little bit in New York, but less New York. There's a lesson that comes out of it. It's right now, the national mood is not in our favor. Hopefully, Trump and Republicans in DC turn that around, and we're going to talk about that next. But the reality is, we are facing headwinds right now. The wind is not at our backs. And so, if you think that's just going to magically disappear because you posted a pithy meme on Facebook, that's really not how elections work. If you think that we're going to win an election because you look prettier than the other candidate, or you had a white paper solution but didn't actually go out there and raise money or knock on doors, it ain't going to happen. If you don't put in the work, we're going to get our butts kicked in November, just like we've gotten them kicked in 24 and 22 and 20 and 18. And, maybe are you sick of losing? I am. But if you're not, we'll just keep doing it, I guess.
Well, I think that's the key, right? Nobody's coming to save us, right? If you're running for office, if you're a county chair, if you're an elected official, nobody's going to write in and, oh, here's the $100,000. You just won your race. Like, it's not happening. So you've got to do everything that you can within reason, whatever you're able to do, and then appreciate any support that you get from the outside. But you can't bank on that. It's not. And you've got to get out and talk to people that don't agree with you or that are on the fence. You can't just post on Facebook to your friends that, I mean, if you're a Republican and you're posting on Facebook, most of the Democrats have probably unfriended you already. So they lose their minds, right? So you're not talking to them unless you actually go out and knock a door. Nobody's reading your Facebook post and saying, man, Michael, you really made a good point. I think I'm going to vote Republican this election. Like, it's not happening.
No, Michael, and I agree with you with that. And I go back to Nabila Saeed's campaign. That girl knocked on every single door in her district, whether it was Republican or Democrat. She knocked on every door, and she won. And she had no problem winning. And she's doing the same thing right now. She's knocking on every single door. And she comes off very likable. She's a very nice person. So people, they don't really care. Like, some people are going to think care whether she's Democrat or Republican, but a lot of people just meeting her, they just like her and they're going to vote for her.
And I think that's the same thing that Kevin Schmidt's done. I mean, you look at his social media, he's everywhere. He knocks an insane amount of doors, and that's what it takes in these swing districts.
Well, Michael, the point you made earlier about no one's coming in to save you, Fingston on the Illinois had his own post this week about how Republicans get back on track in Illinois. And Batnick made that same point, that we've seen this a lot right now, this cycle, where a whole bunch of people sitting around saying, well, if somebody cuts me a 6-figure check, I'll go do this. Or if someone cuts me, a 7-figure check, I'll run for governor. Like, winners put in the work. We've talked about this a number of times on this podcast. Go earn it. Go show you're worthy of an investment. Like, the business community, listen, I've been harsh on them, saying you all got to get out there and get involved, but I don't blame them, because many of them that I talk to who used to be donors to the Republican Party, they say, why would we donate to someone who's doesn't have a plan for how they're going to win and is doing no work to execute it? Like, I didn't build my business that way. I didn't become a millionaire by just handing my cash out to people because they said, oh, I want your money. Like, I invest in smart investments, and right now there are very few smart investments on the Republican side of the aisle in the state. And so it's the same point you made, Michael. Let's have an actual plan, and let's get off our butts and go execute it and go prove we're worthy of an investment. Here's the good news. I have talked to a lot of people, former big Republican donors, future big Republican donors from the business community, especially because we do a lot of work with them. And they have told me flat out that they're not gone. They are ready and willing to donate if we ever get our act together. They are ready to do it, but we've got to prove we're worthy of it. And so far, for years, we haven't. But they're still there. They're still ready to cut that check right now. They're just putting it into nonprofits because Republicans in the state haven't proven we're worth it. And they're donating nationally. That's what they're doing. But they're willing to donate again. We just actually have to be worthy of an investment. So get out there and prove you're worthy of an investment. I promise it'll come.
Or they're donating to Democrats, Collin.
In some cases, yeah. Yeah, in some cases. All right. Last thing here. What are we actually spending our time on? Our buddy, John Lopez, who's been on a few times, informed me. I didn't hear about this. Maybe one of you guys did. Apparently, there was another attempted coup in Kane County GOP last week. Didn't succeed, but I mean, we keep saying this over and over. Like, this is what we're spending our time on. Everyone wants to be king of the garbage pile instead of actually, like, let's all just work together and get the job done. So we hear this each week. There's a different coup attempt in a county or a township township or a region or a central committee district. Kane was apparently the latest one. Listen, I don't know Kane very well. I don't know if they're doing a good job or a bad job, but I can tell you this. If this is all we spend our time on who gets to be king of who gives a crap, this is why we lose.
It's with Republicans like that who needs enemies.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you the majority of primary voters don't even know what the heck a central committee is. So, like, it is a lot less relevant than people think it is.
That's if they know what a primary is. You know, I can still remember a friend telling me, well, my husband said that's not the real election. The real election is in November. Like, did you go to school?
Yeah.
All right, let me get us to our next topic. I know I'm itching to talk about this. I have to imagine Jed is probably itching to talk about this. Let's talk about cost of living. Let's talk about affordability. Let's start here with the bad side of this. Donald Trump in the White House is struggling on this topic. We were very excited a week or two ago when it seemed like they promised us that we're going to start taking this seriously. Trump even called himself the affordability president. But in the last week, he's now gone back to saying affordability is a con job by the Democrats. And apparently there are many, many people in the White House and in Congress who are begging him to focus on it, but he's instead saying, oh, all the prices are coming down, everything's fine, don't worry about it. Here, listen, let's be real. You look at gas prices, we are absolutely seeing an improvement. And that's while we're refilling the strategic petroleum reserve that Biden emptied out to try to save himself and Kamala Harris in the election. So, like, there are signs of improvement. You look at in some of the other categories we've covered for the last couple of months, there are signs of improvement. But to put your head in the sand and say everything's fine, there's not a single working family, not a single person out there in this country who's going to say, yeah, it's affordable, everything's fine. And so this is a serious problem at the top of our ticket. And we continue to see that carry down to the rest of Republicans. Especially in this state, we have struggled. I have screamed, guys, I don't know how long, 2 years, I've been screaming for us to finally start taking this seriously and talk about it. There are good people like Jed who've been really working on that, and I know he's going to talk about it. And we're also seeing some signs, like some of those Republican commentators over the last few weeks who've gone out and said, oh, it's all about affordability. It's like, where have you been the last 2 years when I've been taking unlimited flack for trying to push that and getting attacked constantly for it? But sure, you now are the one telling us all we should be focused on affordability. You saw in his interview this week, which we'll talk about in a minute, Darren Bailey talked about how they coined the word affordability a few months ago. It's like, what are you talking about, dude? I mean, I'm really glad you're actually talking about it. So we'll take it. But the reality is, some of us have been screaming about this for years, and it doesn't help us out when Trump won't take it seriously at the top of the ticket. But we have got to do more about this affordability problem, this cost of living problem for working families. Over and over, we're hearing it from voters. That is the top of their mind. That is their top concern. We got to do something about it if we think we're going to win an election. Jed, I want to start with you because you're doing something about it.
You know, I mean, you're getting hit on every level. Everyone on this call, I mean, we're all raising families. I just went out for a birthday celebration the other night and got in the car with my wife and drove away and looked at her. I'm like, can you believe that meal cost X? Like, it's not like we went to Morton's Steakhouse or some exuberant thing. It was just a local establishment. So whether it's food, groceries, you know, that you're bringing back home or you're going out to eat, your car, your home values are insanely off the charts. And this Generation Z, to get into a house is almost impossible. Where once I was that age, you know, 20 some years ago, and it was a lot easier to actually invest and buy a home. And these are big issues and they are not going away. And you can say they're a con game, but the con man is going to come and going to upturn a lot of seats here in Illinois and across the nation if we don't start paying attention to him. We need solutions. It's all I've been doing the last probably 30 days. I've been working on legislation for 26, and it's 100% cost of living. Property taxes, affordable housing, and career opportunities are all I've been focusing on, because hopefully the other side of the aisle is willing to listen to some of these ideas, but we need to stop complaining, listen to Collin, talk about cost of living, and provide solutions, because the people want solutions.
But I think, Jed, that's the thing that drives me crazy is there are so many Republican or conservative positions, issues, policies, whatever, that actually could help in this space. Like, we're not saying to change what you believe. We're not telling you to stop being the free market capitalist that you are. I mean, that's obviously foundational to the Republican Party. But the point is that you've got to start talking about this problem and identify those solutions you have that help in this space. You talk about affordability when it comes to housing. Republicans are big on jobs and opportunity. So then talk about it. Talk about getting those young people that first career opportunity so they can make enough to afford their first house. You did not in any way change what you believed by saying that, but now you actually framed the issue in a way that touches on the on what matters to the voters you're trying to reach right now. We're not ever telling you to change your beliefs. We're saying to understand what matters to voters right now and use that filter when you open your mouth.
Yeah, I really appreciate Jed talking about Generation Z. As a resident Zoomer on this podcast, even though I may not look like it sometimes or perhaps act like it sometimes, it is really rough for my generation. One of the problems the Republicans have historically had, I like to say that they have gotten a little bit better on this, but they always like to point to how well the stock market's doing. Look how well the stock market's doing. We're reaching new highs, new highs, new highs. Look how well President Trump is for the stock market. That's all well and good, but none of us are retiring anytime soon. None of us are pulling money out of our 401ks. We're not senior citizens over here. We're not experiencing any of the highs that the stock market might be giving to a different generation than our own. So that's one problem that I see in a lot of Republican messaging, is that they're tone deaf to the issues that my generation is facing. In addition, a lot of
Chris,
my generation.
Go ahead. I want to have you continue, but I just want to say it's not just Gen Z. And a lot of our polling, when we look at those middle ages of 40 to 64, roughly, or 35 to 64, pick however you want to sort of portion that out, they agree with you. It isn't just Gen Z. It isn't just young people, middle-aged people too, going all the way up to 64. So even if the point is to say stock market, look, it's great. Guess what? Even middle-aged people don't care about that. So I just want to strengthen your point with that. Carry on.
I agree with you, Collin, though. One thing I would tack on to that is that those generations already have homes. Those generations already have families. And when my generation is trying to start up and, buy a home, I was looking every so often, I look at homes, thinking about how I can get out of the hellscape that is my family and my house. And I look at homes, and there are homes, 2-bedroom homes in working class neighborhoods that were going for $150,000 in 2021 are now being sold for $400,000. That is, if you can't get a 2-bedroom startup home for under $400,000, my generation is going to be living at home until we're 40. That is not sustainable whatsoever.
Yeah, but Chris, I think on this point, though, when it comes to housing values, and Jed, you brought it up too, look at the other side of that equation. The people who currently are in those houses, especially seniors, they want their values to keep going up. That's their retirement. That's their investment. That's the biggest investment most people will make. And that's sort of the yin and yang of this, because people are always like, well, why do people vote for referendums or for school districts or, new police stations or whatever? They're voting for it because it's been proven that raises their home value. And if you currently have a home, that's a good thing for you. And so I think you have to approach this with that dual understanding that we can't price out people like Chris and the younger generation who need that starter home and that first opportunity. But while understanding that those who currently have homes do actually want the values to go up, because that's going to help them long term with their finances. And so there's a little bit more nuance to this issue that I think that some people are willing to accept. And so this idea that we just want to suppress home values because that way the younger people can get in that first home, well, I don't know that that's the solution, because then if you're suppressing home values, you're hurting those seniors or current people who are living in those homes that are counting on that extra revenue, that extra profit when they sell the home or when they retire or when they pass and want to pass the value down to their children or grandchildren. So it's more nuanced than just, because that's what the Democrats want to do. They just want to suppress all home values. And I don't know that that helps everyone. And so you want to be a little smarter about your approach on this issue.
Well, look, I'm just trying to approach this from my generation's perspective, and we're going to approach it from the perspective of self-interest. Though I want to conclude my point with this. What frustrates me the most is that I know many people of my generation, particularly young males, who voted for Donald Trump for a million different reasons, a million different reasons. And they look at some of the rhetoric coming out of the White House these days, and it seems like the Trump administration is constantly shooting themselves in the foot day in and day out by saying things like affordability is a Democratic con job. My generation put Donald Trump in the White House primarily, or at least partially, because we want our lives to be more affordable. We want to be able to buy a home, raise a family. We want someone like Donald Trump, who apparently understood that during the course of the campaign. We want him to understand that. We want that to be the messaging. But every time it seems like the Democrats use a messaging point to their advantage, that Donald Trump, instead of turning it back on them and using it to the Republicans' advantage, which is what politics 101 will tell you to do, he instead just downplays it. Oh, that's not real. That's not real. That's a con job. And that frustrates me most, because everyone wants to talk about low propensity Republicans. And who is the most lowest propensity Republican? Young people, because they might have voted for Donald Trump once or twice, and you're never going to see them in a midterm election. So you want to get these low propensity Republicans out? Let's start talking about the things that these low propensity Republicans actually care about, rather than drifting off into la la land and talking about things that don't actually matter to my generation.
Yeah. Well, I think there's opportunities. I mean, the frustrating thing is, again, if this had been approached, let's say if Trump had said this, there was a great article on this, which I'm now losing where it was from, MS.com or something. But there's a good article on this that, of course, is very slanted, but they made a very good point towards the end, which was, if Trump had come out and said, okay, I need patience. Like, we did X, Y, and Z in the working families tax cut, big beautiful bill, whatever the heck. We did this, and this over here, and now I'm working on, drug prices, which they've done great things on negotiating price cuts on 15 different drugs that are used. And we just did this over here to lower costs on new cars, which they did something this week on that. And, the tariffs, whether you like them or not, our goal with that, this is Trump speaking, our goal with that is to get more investments in America. And guess what? It's working, because GE just announced that they're going to move all of their front-loading washing machines and dryers from China to Louisville to Kentucky. And they're going to spend $3 billion on U.S. projects. And so it's starting, guys. Just give us a little time, and we promise it's going to get better. Like, if that was his message, all right, cool. But to say it's a scam and a con job and everything's fine, like, that just loses us. Chris's generation, swing voters, moderate, middle-aged males especially, who might have voted for Trump 2 years ago or 6 years ago or 10 years ago. But when they hear that, they're like, yeah, no, I can't vote for Republicans. That is their response when they hear that.
Well, I think that there's some metrics where we're seeing improvements on, and I understand Trump's, inclined to highlight those and say, well, look at the stock market, look at gas prices, look at this, look at that. Those are all good things, but there's a lot of other issues where we haven't seen that same level of improvement. And I think over the course of the next year, they've got to be focused on, what about doing something about student loans, home prices, grocery prices. I mean, we've seen improvements, but healthcare is probably the biggest one, right? When people get these, increased premiums and those kind of things. And I heard on the radio this morning, there was somebody that was talking about during the Biden administration, the last 4 years, and Americans lost $3,000 in purchasing power because of inflation and stagnant wages, right? Those two things combined, we lost $3,000. And over the course of the last 10 months, we've regained 1,000 of that 3,000. So, we've cut into that, but we're not back to where we were, 2019, which is what I think people want. They expected, oh, I remember how things were in Trump's first administration. I want to get back to that. Well, it's going to take, we dug such a hole during Biden. It's going to take us some time. But you can't be out there saying it's a con job. You got to say, hey, we've regained 1,000 and we're going to regain another 1,000 in the next 10 months. Just give us the runway to do it, please.
Well, Collin, I have to disagree with you on the senior aspect of them using their house for their retirement. Most seniors want to stay in their house. They want to stay there until they die. And so they could care less how much it costs, except when that cost gets driven up, then their taxes get driven up if they don't qualify for that senior freeze. And, and then their senior freeze.
But Sharon, you've been supervisor. You're a supervisor. You know this. That's not how it works. When all home values go up, your taxes stay exactly the same. It's if your home value goes up relative to your neighbors that your taxes go up.
Right.
So this idea that if all of our home values go up, we're going to pay higher taxes, that is not true, but it's what people believe because they don't understand how taxes are.
Right. No. I'm saying that, like even my house. I mean, there's no improvements on my house in the last 15 years. because I can't afford it. But the person across the street put all kinds of money in, but yet they're still paying less taxes than I am. It's identical house, so it's those kind of things happen, but it's basically those property taxes are driving all the seniors out of their homes. They can't afford them anymore. And they're either taking out these reverse mortgages, which are horrible, and then they have nothing in the end because they live beyond their reverse mortgage. And I see that all the time, and it's sad. It's sad to watch. It's sad to hear about. People have to sell their houses and rent, even though they've lived in that house for the last 40 years.
But I think the point to be made here, and if we've got smart people watching and listening to this, we talk at a higher level than maybe your average person on the street. That's the point of this podcast. And so for policymakers who are watching this, the point is if you raise all home values, that does nothing to people's taxes.
Right.
What's raising people's taxes is governments increasing their spending at every level and increasing their budgets at every level. That's what increases people's taxes. But if you increase everybody's home values, that's not in any way impacting their taxes. If it's even, if everybody's is going up. And so this idea that helping people raise their home values is going to somehow hurt them on their taxes, we got to be smarter than that. That's not actually true. What's hurting them on their taxes is governments increasing costs and increasing their budgets every single year. And yes, there are things that are causing that to go up, but this idea that helping people raise their home values is somehow raising their taxes, that's part of the problem, is that that lack of understanding of how taxes actually work in this state. All right, but I think the point is, and let me leave us with this, some good news. So Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego was in Chicago, I don't know, a week or two ago, and he was here mostly to talk about how, Republicans are screwing up in immigration and blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing I actually really want to focus on for this topic. He said this. He said, well, the party may, there's a warning here for Democrats. While the party may benefit from growing frustration amongst Latinos, he said you can't take that for granted. Here's his quote. I don't think we can just assume that Latinos are going to vote for Democrats if we don't actually talk to their needs. And his point was that Democrats have to actually deliver on economic priorities and immigration reforms. He said, you promised that. You as in Democrats promised that multiple times, and you guys have never done it. So this is definitely a lesson learned for us. The point being that while, yes, we have a beef with the Republicans in D.C. and the Trump White House on affordability and cost of living, and they need to do something about it, the reality is, as Chris said, a lot of people voted for Trump this last election because Democrats had not done something about this. And so while we're saying that Republicans need to do better, the ground is fertile here. The opportunity is huge because nationwide, voters still remember how Democrats made their lives more expensive and more difficult. In Illinois especially, voters are acutely aware that Democrats are making their lives more expensive and more difficult. There are opportunities here, but we have to actually grab onto it, talk about it, and hammer it home, because voters right now are not connecting those dots between Democrats are voting for all these fee increases and tax increases and everything else, and oh, maybe I should vote against them in the ballot box. We've got to do that for them, and we're not. But there is an opportunity if we, going back to our last topic, get off our butts and do something about it.
Well, when you've got the state, adding on one thing after another, for example, there's $10 million that just went out by the DCEO that each business, there are 47 businesses that got about $10 million. Most of them got $245,000. Some of these, by the way, 4 of those 47 companies were vendors at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. So clearly they didn't need the money that much. But this was for blighted areas. One of the places was this little cafe in a small town that I'm sure that $245,000 wasn't as much as they would have made in 5 years. I mean, as a profit. In the fact that they're just handing this money out nilly-willy, that I mean, we're spending money, like the old saying, we're putting out checks that we can't cash. And we're doing it every single day. Every day there's a new program. Pritzker gave $10 million to the food pantries because of the federal shutdown.
Yeah, I mean, if we would just improve the business environment, we wouldn't have to keep bribing people to stay here. Jed, it looks like you were trying to jump in. A final word if you've got thoughts on this.
Yeah, the Democrats are vulnerable. I was just, first time in 3 years, I was at a joint groundbreaking with the governor, and he was fielding some questions, and I was standing behind I guess I'll just call him out, because I was standing behind him, listening to him field questions. I'm like, oh my word. This man, not that I didn't know this, not that we don't know it on this podcast, but when you're watching in real time in front of you, I'm like, he is totally vulnerable. I wish I had a little sign that I could hold up in the back, like he's lying, he's lying, he's lying. And my staff was like, don't worry, your face said it all. And I was like, well, that's great. But they are vulnerable. And we need to provide the solutions. We are horrible at messaging a lot of times and getting the solutions out here. To Chris's issue, like I've got a bill coming out called Shiz, starter home incentives for Generation Z. It's actually zoned, but I love the Generation Z. But we just need to start communicating this stuff. And it's not trying to drive home prices down, but it's trying to open up pathways for municipalities to get some perks from the state if they can actually provide opportunities for young families to afford homes. And we just need to structure things right. And it's just one idea. And there are going to be a lot of them from hopefully both sides of the aisle. I will take a good idea from a Democrat if it's a good idea, but we need to help people. That's what I want. I want to help people. And we have the winning solutions. We just need to actually put the work in and get the message out.
Yeah. Well, great way to close that topic. Let's move to some political topics. We'll start on the governor's race. We've got a few angles to take on this one. So let me sort of segment our conversation a little bit. First thing is the biggest news of the last week, which is it looks like Darren Bailey has officially rejoined the campaign trail. He's done a number of interviews, showed up at some events. So it's good to see him back out there. Obviously, everyone has said repeatedly that our thoughts and prayers are with him. I'll just say on that topic, in one of the interviews that he gave, he was talking about Finn, and I hadn't heard this story before, but I feel like kinship with Finn, even though I've never met him, because apparently he named his dog Lego, which everyone, if you're connected with me on social media, knows I love playing with Legos. And so he loved Lego so much he named his dog Lego. Now, it's a heartbreaking end to the story because apparently Lego was on the helicopter too. And so a few hours later, after learning that he had just lost his family, he then asked, "Where's Lego? Where's my dog?" And then learned he also lost his dog, which, I mean, that's just add to the challenges for that poor young man. But anyway, so I just thought that was an interesting story to share, and I loved the Lego connection. So maybe Finn, if you're ever around, I'll give you some of my Legos to play with. But on the race itself, you've got Darren getting back onto the field. So let's start there, and then we'll talk about the full field and what everybody's doing and what you guys are hearing. But the major development is, Darren getting back on in the race. He did a number of interviews. I don't know if you guys saw any of them. I watched a few, and I've got some feedback, but I've talked enough here. So I'll shut up for a minute. Just if anybody has thoughts on what they've seen from Darren coming back out, have you seen any changes? Let's start there, and then we'll open it up to the full race. Man, I don't know if you guys, as I said, I don't know if you've seen the interviews. I know everybody's kind of.
I did watch it, and not little snippets. It was on. I don't know if it was on social media where I ran across it, but I paused for a moment, probably invested 3-4 minutes, and I just thought, I was just kind of like intrigued. At least the 2 to 3 minutes that I watched. Again, I can't speak for the entire interview. Darren's a lot more on point than I've seen him in the past, at least in those couple minutes, talking about cost of living and some other stuff that I just haven't heard in the past versus, not to bring up ghosts of 2 years ago, but just jumping on buses and talking to the base that's already voting for you. If we could get that message out that he was communicating, I was just intrigued by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the good side, I saw a different Darren. I mean, he seemed more human, more likable. I mean, that's always been a bit of Darren's problem, and it's just be cold, whatever political people here. Likability is a big thing in politics, and whether it's because of the accent or sort of the Southern Baptist preacher style that he speaks, or I don't know, there's other reasons, but he never really had that personal connection with the voters, that likability. I don't know if it's just obviously a concerted effort this time around to change, or the tragedy he went through, or a little bit of both, but he did come across more likable, more human, which is something he had struggled with in the past. And you could tell, to your point, Jed, he was clearly trying to change up that message. He's still not a natural good communicator or good messenger. So in some of the ways he presented some of those cost of living issues or some of his answers to some of the questions, I was like, okay, that could have been significantly better. But he was trying, which is not something you could have said about his previous races. So I did see signs. We need to see a heck of a lot more. But I certainly, in some of those interviews, saw signs of improvement. And if they can build on that, I think he could do better than he's done in the past.
I mean, I think that, I've been around Darren a lot, obviously, because he was on the ballot down here as a state rep, senator, governor, Congress. And I remember back early on when he was first running for the legislature, there was a lot more like positivity, optimism, like, hey, we're going to get in there, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I felt like, in the governor's race and then his congressional run, it was a lot more negative. And I can understand how you can get into that, headspace, right? You're running against JB Pritzker. Everything sucks. He's got the state shut down because of COVID. I can understand getting into that kind of one track. But I watched the full interview with the Marianne Ahern, and then I listened to the Fingston one this morning, and I honestly I was impressed. I think he did a lot. It was two of the best interviews I think he's given, and very personable, very human. He seemed like, oh, this is a real person. Like he's had struggles just like any other family in the state of Illinois. And I think it was really good. And I hope that he continues down this path, because I think if he does that, I think it'll pay dividends.
I mean, I'm in the same boat kind of as Jed, where I didn't watch the full Marianne Ahern interview, but I was able to catch tidbits of it. And my takeaway from it is similar to Butler, where Darren is giving off more of a serious candidate vibe when you even just seeing him in the interview space, Marianne Ahern interviewing him, he gives a more serious candidate aura around him when you see, because like Ted Dabrowski's not getting that interview right now, Jim Mendrick's not getting that interview right now, Rick Heidner's not getting that interview right now. So when you see that, it actually demonstrates a level of seriousness to the average voter who may or may not be watching this interview, and I think that's a good thing for the Bailey campaign long term, if they can maintain that aura around them and that visibility around them is more of a serious campaign for governor. On the other hand, one thing I've noticed throughout the course of this campaign, this might be me getting numb in my old age in politics. This campaign for governor is frankly so boring. It is. I remember 4 years ago, and I always go back to 4 years ago, because there was so much energy 4 years ago. Jed remembers this because he was on the ballot 4 years ago. There was so much energy behind these grassroots campaigns. You had county coordinators, township coordinators who were at every meeting, Darren Bailey literature, Gary Rabine literature, the Richard Irvin people coming around. Like, there were so many people who were willing to get involved and do things for so many of these statewide candidates. And nowadays, I see Ted Dabrowski people every now and then at events, but I really don't see people who are really amped up about Darren Bailey. I don't see people who are that amped up about Ted Dabrowski or any of the other campaigns. So up until this point, speaking generally about the campaign and specifically about Darren's, there really is a lack of energy at the grassroots level for this gubernatorial race. And it's very concerning going into 2026, in my opinion.
Well, and Chris, I think that was where I was going to end this and then open it up for people who have more broad thoughts on the race. Was you got to build on this. Like, as I said, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jed, but you talked about how he started to talk about cost of living and some issues that really matter, and that was great to hear. You got to get better at communicating on those things. His answers to some of the questions from Marianne on Trump and on some of the issues that she tried to catch him on. He sort of, if you watch it or read his responses, he struggled a bit. So, I mean, there's some work to be done for sure. And on the fundraising side, I know he just got back on the trail, so we'll give him a little bit of time, but $1,000 A1 just isn't going to cut it. We got to see a heck of a lot more fundraising. He mentioned in that interview that the blueprint for Illinois is coming. I want to see that. I mean, what's your plan? Supposedly, it sounds like they're working on something. I mean, supposedly the Mendrick team was working on something months ago. The Dabrowski team was working on something before he announced. I keep hearing this, that, we've got a whole blueprint. We're going to have instead of the contract with America, we're going to have a contract with Illinois, which I hate that term because no one was around in the 90s. No one's going to remember that from the 90s, but whatever.
I was.
But there we go. But like the average voter doesn't remember contract with America. So you say contract with Illinois, they don't know what that means. But but whatever. The point is, like, we've been promised there's these plans or plan being out there developed for the future of Illinois, and this is our vision for what Illinois is going to look like. He brought it up in the interview. He did it himself. She didn't. So supposedly there's something there. Like, we're going to have to build here, and we don't have a lot of time. So to Chris's point, like, I thought the interview was good. He came across a heck of a lot better than I've seen him in the past. But this is just a starting point. Like, we need to see better even on messaging and communicating. We've got to see a heck of a lot better on fundraising. And I want to see a vision for a positive, as Michael said, a positive vision for how things could be great for working families in this state. Like, those are the things we need to see in the coming weeks, not even months. Because if you're going to prove you're the guy who can defeat J.B. Pritzker, not for your own fault because of the tragedy you faced, but listen, the clock is ticking. We're in December now. You've got very little time to prove to us that you are the candidate. And Darren knows where he's at in this race. He talked about the fundraising and said that Dabrowski's fundraising essentially dried up when Darren announced, which actually I hadn't heard it that way. And it's, him being sort of creative in the way that he worded it, but it's not wrong. I mean, Dabrowski hasn't raised much since Darren announced. I mean, he hasn't raised much since his initial million period. But like the way Darren is framing that, which is, hey, once we got in, everyone was waiting to see what we could do. Okay, that's true, Darren. So now you and everybody else on the team, you've got to get out there and prove that you are the candidate, because we look at Dabrowski, Mendrick, and some of these other races. People are willing to give those other candidates a shot if you prove you can't do this thing, because it is too important. We have got to defeat J.B. Pritzker. So it's weeks, not months. Somebody better get out there and prove they can actually win this dang thing. And so far, nobody's done it, but there are some positive signs from some of the campaigns, starting with what we saw from Darren this week. Hold on.
Say he doesn't have a chance.
Well, let me open it up to the whole conversation. And we'll start with you, Sharon, because I know you've got thoughts. So overall, your thoughts on the race. That was about Darren getting back in and maybe showing some growth. Any thoughts on the overall race and maybe some of the other candidates and what they've been doing the last few weeks? Go ahead.
Right. I have people asking me that they don't even realize there's a governor's race. So, I mean, there's part of the problem. But again, there's just no possible way for Bailey to beat Pritzker. It's just not going to happen. So let's try somebody else. And I will stand by that. And I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but nice guys don't always win first. And it really comes down to someone that can, I truly do not believe he is capable of beating Pritzker. There are enough people that just don't like him. And the people that I know that, they're like, if Bailey's it, then they're not voting for anybody.
Well, but I think the message to those people and also to the other campaigns is that if you want an alternative, if you want it to be somebody other than Darren Bailey running against Pritzker, then you need to do something about it. Because I hear from a lot of people that are rolling their eyes and aggravated and, oh, please, it can't be Darren again. It's got to be somebody else. Darren can't win. And it's like, well, you might be right, but you've got to then get behind Dabrowski, write him a check. Make some phone calls, post on your Facebook and tell your friends, hey, I'm supporting Ted, and this is why you should too. Because I've heard a lot of that, like, oh, we need an alternative, but I have not seen very much of people doing something about it.
Well,
and I think that's our issue.
Political people I'm talking about, Michael. These are people that are generally not political. They don't put things out on their Facebook.
Even the political people that are doing the same thing.
Well, and I think you're both making good points, that there are definitely people out there who will say no to Darren, and if he wants to change their minds, he better get out there and do it. And
he can't change their mind. I can tell you that up front.
And that's fine, Sharon. But I think the point Michael is making is one that I haven't heard anybody make, and I want to give you kudos on that, Michael, because honestly, now that you've said it, I feel the same way. Like there are so many people I've talked to who's like, oh, it can't be Darren. But now that I think about it, they've done nothing for any of the other candidates. Like, there are other candidates in the race. Dabrowski at the moment seems like he's the most viable alternative, though he does his best every week to prove to us that he's not viable. You've got Mendrick, who's a sort of a dark horse candidate, and Heidner, nobody knows what the heck he is or what he stands for. Like, there are other options if you don't think it should be Darren. But Michael, you're right. I mean, if I think of the many, because there have been a lot of people who have said to me, it can't be Darren. I don't know that a single one of them has done anything for any of the other candidates. So there you go. Like, if you don't want it to be Darren, then get off your butts. Because now, Darren's winning this primary. Like, in the current pace we're going, none of these other candidates have shown that they can even come close in this primary. So if you don't want it to be Darren, then get off your butts and do something.
Well, it's not even just Darren. he could not have picked a worse running mate. I mean, I have no respect for Aaron Delmar as a political or as a politician. He's done everything that
I think our audience is aware of that fact, Sharon.
Well, because you know what? I know him. That's the difference. I actually know the man. I know him very well. So I'm coming out as someone who used to be very close with him. I know more about him than anybody probably on the outside world, other than his own, intimate family. So, yeah, people should listen to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I think there's a lot to be said for thinking through these candidates and their tickets and everything else and deciding who you think can win in the general election. At this point, though, I mean, I haven't seen any of these candidates prove that they can beat Pritzker or even challenge Pritzker, and that's what frustrates me. I don't care who the nominee is. I don't have a horse in this race, but whoever it is has got to be somebody who can win. And so far, we're 0 for however many. None of these candidates have proven they can win. Some positive signs out of Darren in the last week, which is why we're calling it out, because we want to see more of it. I love to see. We're going to talk about crime in a little bit. And the Dabrowski campaign went after Pritzker on crime, and the whole flak jacket, tone deaf thing he did with Kimmel. That was a strong move by the Dabrowski campaign. So like there's a few little signs, but that doesn't win you a governor's race in a state as big as Illinois. You need good moments multiple times a day, not once a week. You look at the fundraising for these candidates, it's a few thousand here, a few thousand there once a week. Like this is state rep fundraising numbers, not even gubernatorial fundraising numbers. Like we got to see a hell of a lot more before we can start to pretend like any of these are real candidates.
Well, and we saw
Michael, hold on. Jed's been trying to get in.
That's all right. No, you're good. I just was going to say, I can't figure out what any of them are doing. I know Darren has been sidelined, and I totally understand that. But collectively as a whole, a primary pool, and I'm friends with a lot of them, friends with Darren, friends with Ted, even know Heidner a little bit. But like, what are they doing? Like December 17th, absentee, people can request your absentee ballot. So we're talking less than 2 weeks. Early voting is 60 some days away, like 63 days away. This election is over in about 75 days. And I feel like no one has there's no activity. There's no urgency. We'll wait till January 10th. Like, you've had October, November, we're into December. Like you should by now, if you were running a legit campaign, you should have owned the primary at this point, because we are so close to the election being at the finish line. And I feel like no one's even really mounted up on the starting blocks yet. So it's just a big head scratcher to me.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And the problem is, as we've talked about repeatedly, poor Lane, when he has to edit this episode between Chris and Sharon constantly turning off their videos. Lane's got like 6 hours of editing to do. If you guys could maybe stop, Lane would really appreciate it. So there was a poll done recently that was reported on that had Pritzker's approval actually above water. I don't know if I believe that, because it's been underwater in every poll I've seen, but does show he's underwater on crime, on taxation, on immigration, shows that the state, people believe the state's on the wrong track at a 60% clip. I mean, Pritzker is vulnerable here. And that's, I think, what drives a lot of us crazy is we can actually beat this guy, or at minimum make it really dang close, which would help all of our other candidates on the ballot. We could maybe take, House District 76 and hold on to all our Senate districts, and maybe take a knockoff Turner and Halpin. And there's gains to be had. Maybe even an IL-17, get a congressional win for the first time in forever. Like if we do better at the top of the ticket, if we can get close to Pritzker, let alone maybe beat him, that could have a huge impact throughout the state. We could see a surprise from a Don Tracy or a Brian Drew. Like there's opportunity, and the vulnerability is there for Pritzker. But right now, I don't know. It's a bunch of state rep level campaigns trying to take on Pritzker. Like we got some work to do here. I mean, I brought it up before, like the Dabrowski campaign this week, other than talking about crime, which was good, they put a big focus on Cook County's guaranteed income program and how it's a bad thing. And it's like it's wire points or IPI as a gubernatorial race. Like it's not actually a focused, strategized gubernatorial race. It's like, IPI put out a thing, or we're going to put out a thing on wire points. So now that's our topic of the day for the campaign, which ironically, when they came out attacking Cook County, IPI within hours attacked the state program. And that's fine. But guys, having a educational, professorial, this is what's wrong with guaranteed income programs. That's all well and good, but that doesn't win elections, right? And you're talking about a $7.5 million program at Cook County. You're talking about an $800,000 expenditure in the 2026 budget for the state. Like that's what you're spending your minimum, your limited capital on, putting the focus on. This is not going to win you a governor's race.
Well, I think, I looked at this article with the poll that you were referencing, and one of the things that really stood out to me was on crime, 58.9% disapprove. On tax of Pritzker's handling of the issue, taxation, 61.5%, immigration, 57%, right? But then you look and it says that he's above water, or that he would, beat Darren Bailey by 20 points. So, like, what we have to do as Republicans, these candidates, they have to draw the contrast on those issues, because if 60% of the voters think that Pritzker is doing a bad job on crime, then if you're Darren or Ted or Mendrick, you have to explain what you would do differently, because obviously that 60% of the electorate is interested in, well, maybe somebody else could do a better job. The problem that we've got is everybody knows Pritzker's doing a bad job, right? For at least 48% of the electorate believes that Pritzker is doing a bad job, according to this poll. But that same 48% doesn't trust us to do a better job at this point in time. So they're not going to vote for us.
Well, honestly, when you're talking about a crime, don't come out with stupid things like, "Oh, we're going to repeal the entire Safety Act." That's not going to happen.
Well, and Sharon, can I put a pin in that, because we actually have a whole crime topic. So I promise you can start us on crime. But let me just, sorry, I was just, because we're gonna have a whole topic, and if people come looking for it and they click on that topic, they're gonna miss your thoughts. So some other quick updates on the race, and then we'll close this topic down. For anybody who cares, for the 7 people who are maybe going to vote for him, Max Solomon has dropped out of the governor's race. So I'm sure all the other candidates are going to be scrambling for his 7 votes in this race. Patrick Fingston reports there was a Rick Heidner appearance somewhere at a holiday party. He actually saw Rick Heidner. It's the first time I've heard anybody see the guy out at something. Still no website announcement, any sort of a presence. Though he is supposedly running and he made the ballot, but I guess it's exciting that somebody actually saw him at something for the first time. And for Dabrowski, I said he did a good job on crime. I gave him a little bit of a hit on, guaranteed income, but I did see, and Michael, I wanted to ask you this. I know that they promoted he was going to do a town hall this Wednesday in Mattoon with Brad Hallbrook and Chris Miller. Do you know, did that happen?
Yeah, I did. I saw pictures on Facebook. So yeah, it happened.
That's notable. I mean, you're talking about 2 people, and Hallbrook and Miller, who have served with Darren in the Freedom Caucus, and they just did a town hall with Dabrowski instead. So, I mean, that was something I raised my eyebrows and said, "Oh, that's interesting." So, there are some developments here that if you're watching this, we want to make sure you're aware of. So, those are just the final things. Anybody have any final thoughts before we move on from this topic? All right, let's move over to the Senate race. So we talked polling. There was another poll, and if I thought the previous poll was maybe a little bit questionable, I think this poll is a lot of bit questionable, but let's talk about it. It's a poll of the Democratic side of the race, and they found that Raja is in the lead, which of course that part I agree with 29%. They had Robin Kelly in second at 22, and then Juliana Stratton at just under 18. Which, if accurate, means Stratton's actually in third in that race. I struggle to believe that Robin Kelly is that high, considering she hasn't done much in the campaign. However, I think this is really bad news for Stratton, that even if this is a poll that's not super accurate, the fact that there's anything out there that shows you in third continues this conversation we've been having, that she is running an incredibly underwhelming and frankly pathetic campaign. That even that there's a poll out there that has her trailing Robin Kelly, who's essentially a Manchurian candidate, and yet you're losing to her in this poll. Again, I don't necessarily believe it, but I think this just really emphasizes how bad of a race Stratton is running. And it also says that Raja, despite spending millions of dollars, has not run away with this. I mean, almost number one there is undecided. I mean, there's 28% in this poll, still undecided. Plenty of space here for either Stratton or Kelly to pick this up. So the race is not over, but we continue to see signs, even just in the press. Kelly's out there, Kelly's out there, and Raja's out there. And then Stratton, every day it's like she's just tagging along with Pritzker somewhere. She doesn't have her own presence, her own actual campaign, her own press releases and press events. Like, she's literally just shadowing Pritzker and hoping that gets her the nomination. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think about it, but your thoughts on the U.S. Senate race?
I agree with you, Colin. I think I would want to see another poll come out that has Kelly in second, or at least close to second, before I'm going to believe it 100%. At the same time, this poll is indicative of what I'm hearing on the ground. So many Democratic operatives and just Democratic everyday people have talked to me about the race, and they have no idea what Juliana Stratton's doing. Not a clue. This has to be one of the biggest, up until this point at least, this has to be one of the biggest hatchet jobs of a campaign that I've seen in a very long time. To be able to go from somebody who just has to run an okay to decent campaign to win, and then literally do nothing, absolutely nothing, throughout the entire petitioning process up until the holiday season to actually separate yourself from the rest of the field. I think Juliana Stratton is in big trouble right now. And it's also indicative of the fact that many people in the Democratic Party, they don't actually like Raja Krishnamurti. They don't. A lot of the
I have
donors
for a long time.
A lot of the donors who give him money, even they don't like Raja Krishnamurti. So I think I am not going to sit here and give our audience the illusion that I think Robin Kelly can pull this off, because I really don't. I don't think Kelly has enough money to pull it off. I don't think she has a strong enough grassroots apparatus to pull it off. The only thing that could change that is that Robin Kelly has tried to separate herself from the rest of the field on the issue of Gaza. And if she leans into that enough by having probably the best ballot name other than Kevin Ryan in the U.S. Senate race, it could get interesting to where Robin Kelly goes from Manchurian candidate to strong second. I think Raja would have to collapse in order for her to win, but we are getting ourselves to a point where Juliana Stratton needs to seriously buff up her grassroots and paid outreach campaigns to actually make a dent in this race. She's gotten a lot of endorsements, and you expect her to get a lot of endorsements. She's the lieutenant
Not as many
governor
as I
of
would
that.
expect, to be honest, but yeah.
But you would expect her to be leading the endorsement race right now, but she's doing nothing with it. So Juliana Stratton's campaign has to get their act together, or Raj is going to run away with this, or even open up the door to Robin Kelly in a long shot.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, Robin Kelly is the only candidate who has tried to move to the left. I mean, Raja and even Stratton are still trying to play the middle a little bit. Robin Kelly didn't just come out. You talked about Gaza. I mean, she's the only one who came out on Schumer and wanting a change there. And you've seen the others kind of soften a bit on that since obviously the shutdown. But I mean, the Robin Kelly is trying to make a lane for herself, more progressive, at a time when the other two candidates are kind of letting her own that lane. There is a space here where Robin Kelly could pull this off. It is only December, and there's a lane that for whatever reason the other candidates are just letting her own. If she's smart enough to take advantage of that, she could pull off this primary, which I wouldn't mind to see. I mean, if she wants to run hard to the left, I think that puts Don Tracy in a really dang good position in the general election.
Well, Robin Kelly's gonna go ahead, Chris.
I'll end with this. I don't know who Robin Kelly's campaign manager is. I don't know who their GC is. I don't know any of that stuff. But I empathize with them because they're in a position that so many of us have found themselves in before, where we have a fantastic strategy. We have a fantastic lane to gather enough votes to win this primary, but we've got no money to do it with. So what are we going to do in this situation? So I empathize with Robin Kelly's team if you're watching this podcast.
Yeah, I mentioned, by the way, just real quick, Michael, by the way, when I mentioned the things where Robin Kelly's gone to the left on, and the last, week, ish, there was a vote in DC to condemn socialism, and Robin Kelly voted against condemning socialism. Raja didn't vote, just refused to take a position. But that was another position where Robin Kelly took the far left position. So she continues to try to build that lane. It's pretty clear. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I think if you're Robin Kelly, you need to use this poll to fundraise, right? Saying you're in second, you're beating Juliana, you're within striking distance of Raja, right? You fingers crossed, hope that there's another poll that says, something similar like Chris was alluding to. And if you're Juliana Stratton, you have to come to the realization that the lieutenant governor really isn't relevant. Like these lieutenant governors get the lieutenant governor syndrome where they're like, I've been on the ballot statewide. I'm so important. Everybody knows who I am. And literally nobody knows who you are. She's got to get out there and actually talk to people and shake hands and, meet voters and build a team, right? I mean, you think about the last two times she was on the ballot, Pritzker just bought the races both times. And when he ran, he didn't have a strong opponent, in Darren 4 years ago. So what is she thinking? That
Yeah,
everybody knows who she is and she's so great?
getting a quote in the sixth or seventh paragraph of 2 or 3 Pritzker press releases per day is not going to win you this election.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's
Yeah.
Pritzker doing? I mean, you'd think, I don't know. You'd think maybe Pritzker will have an epiphany over the holidays and say, man, I really need to figure something out about giving her money because she's not doing so well. But it's going to be embarrassing for him especially if she comes in third. I mean, if she comes in third in the Democratic primary as Pritzker's lieutenant governor, whenever he, basically gave her the blessing and endorsed her on day one, I mean, that's embarrassing for Pritzker and Tammy Duckworth.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Chris. This was an issue. This is my last thing here on this one. But Chris, this was something that was interesting to me that you and Michael keyed in on, which was, Raja put out there in the last week that he wanted to double the number of H-1B visas. And what people don't realize is the backstory there, which is the bill that he put in that Raja pushed forward was written by a number of staffing agencies, companies who import labor from India and then staff them out, whether it's IT or different positions in different companies. Like, this is specifically to try to import labor from India. That is the point of this bill he's put in there. And we're in a new world here. I mean, I've been doing politics long enough to remember when Republicans were the party of the free market and importing labor from other countries. And now we've got a complete role reversal where it's Democrats who are pushing that forward. And then you've got Republicans like Don Tracy who came out and said, actually, I'd rather invest in American workers. And it's like, it's a whole new world, a whole new Republican Party, which I know you, Chris, are pretty proud of. But that was just fascinating to me how much of a change that was. And Don's right. Invest in American workers rather than spend this money. I mean, I believe we could do both, to be honest, personally. I think we can do both. We can be a beacon of hope around the world and import talent so we can stay the #1 country on the planet. I would like to keep doing that. But I would also like to continue to invest in our workers rather than importing replacements. And so there's a balance to be struck. But the fact that we have Republicans here standing up for American workers, it's a new day in the Republican Party, Chris. What do you think about that?
Look, going back to what I was talking about earlier with my generation, there are so many people who are fresh out of college or even fresh out of grad school who are struggling every day to find a job. And when you have politicians who are caving to, corporations and, these laissez-faire ideas of immigration where we could just import cheap labor for the benefit of profit, that really hurts my generation because we're the ones who are trying to actually build something in America. And rather than just, we're not just in it for ourselves and not just in it for the cheapest good like so many of these corporations are. And I think that's a message that a lot of people within the Republican Party can take. And I understand it's scary. You're gonna badmouth the free market here and the free movement of labor. But come on, guys, like we have to look out for American jobs first. We have to look out for the American taxpayer. We have to look out for American citizens. And we're not going to do that by continually importing cheap labor from out of the country who are going to work for lower wages, work in worse conditions, who aren't going to be represented by labor unions. All of these things are bad things for the American economy, but good things for American corporations. I think the Republican Party would do better if we were harping on those issues rather than always, coming back to, the free market and profits and things like that. I think that's something we can improve on.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sharon, you're muted.
Sorry about that. There's one thing bringing people in during the 60s for the brain drain. In fact, I have a friend whose mother came here. She, was born and raised in Bombay, and she was medical personnel, came here, got married, had her children here, and, but she came here in a proper manner. She was asked to come over because we were so lax in medical personnel that, in the 60s. But they're trying to bring people over for jobs that we have people that can do those jobs. We're not short on those lower, I guess, factory type, entry
even
level.
IT jobs and
Right.
These are not positions that Americans can't fill.
Correct. That we have enough Americans to fill those and able-bodied to fill those. Now, again, you have the able-bodied that don't want to work, but because they're on this, and this program. So if they work, then they're going to throw it off those programs. That obviously is trying to get changed by the current administration. But It's wrong that we're bringing people in to do these jobs that we are quite capable of doing, or our seniors are quite capable of doing. I know when my dad was older, he could not get a job to save his life. Why? Because he was 70 something years old and no one would hire him.
No. Let me move us to our last topic before we start to close this episode down. And Sharon will get the first word on this one since I promised it to her. We got to talk crime. To set the stage here, there's been some horrific accidents. We haven't had an episode in 2 weeks. There's been some horrific situations. So there was at the holiday tree lighting down in Chicago, which, by the way, I had team members who walked right through there as this was building, as this was growing. And then I was there the morning after. There was a teen takeover, and I've seen different reports, 7 or 8 teenagers shot. I've seen them both in reports. The youngest 13, and just a horrible situation at what's supposed to be a positive sort of family activity. Just ridiculous. And then another attack on the CTA and the Blue Line. You had somebody who had been arrested dozens of times dating back to 2001. They pushed a disabled person in front of a train because they wouldn't give him $1. This is just ridiculous. We saw that somebody was charged with threatening State Senator Andrew Chesney. So we're seeing political violence continue. And then you see in Montgomery County, 2 illegal immigrants who attempted to steal an ATM. And I know, Michael, you posted that on our social media. I mean, I'm sort of giving some examples here, but it's all over the map. And I think the DuPage County Republicans were accurate. Ted Dabrowski was accurate in making fun of Pritzker in his video where he stood there with his flak jacket and said, everything's, it's a hellhole here. And, the joking around about it on Kimmel. I mean, when even Rich Miller is saying that was a dumb idea, and he's basically on Pritzker's payroll, that tells you it was pretty stupid. And rightfully so, Pritzker's taking flack for that, pun intended, and he should, because crime's not a joke. I mean, I think the whole immigration situation in Chicago, I think that hurt us in the sense that it took the focus off of crime. And I think finally now we can get back to focusing on crime, which is where the voters are with us on. And right now you see heart-wrenching stories and gut-wrenching stories, images, visuals. I mean, we're in the social media generation. It isn't just that you hear about it. You can see videos of it. You can read about it. You can see images of this crime as it happens. We wonder why people are so impacted by this crime. And it's definitely a key vulnerability for Pritzker. And it's an emotional issue. Understand, we talked earlier in this podcast about how cost of living is the top issue. That's what's going to win you these elections. But what's going to get people's attention is crime. You use crime to get their attention, and then you win their vote with cost of living. There's a whole, it's a yin and yang here. But crime is that emotional issue that could get people to go, you know what? Maybe it is time for a change. I just want to open it up for your thoughts, and Sharon, you start. I mean, the things that we're seeing here shouldn't happen in a civilized society. You should be able to have a tree lighting ceremony without kids getting shot.
Well, part of it is the lack of effect on people if something happens. You could have people get shot and they just, oh, wow, there was a shooting. And you've got 20,000 people doing video because it's cool to do video. That the physicality of being shot is really the only time that somebody might wake up to what's going on. It's just people don't have that sense of, things being horrified anymore. It's just too, especially
desensitized.
Yeah, they're totally desensitized. I mean, and I see a lot of that just even talking to people. Like I don't watch the news anymore, so I miss half of the stuff that goes on. And people send me stories all the time. What I see it anyway, which I can't imagine how much is out there that I haven't seen. But you go back to those National Guard guys that were shot in Washington, D.C. That was somebody that outright went out and targeted them. And still, half the world is unaffected by it. They're like, oh, well, it's the National Guard. Just like, oh, well, it was a police officer killed. Oh, well, it's the same thing. They just don't care anymore. There's no thought process until it happens to them. Because that's what it comes down to when it goes back to these, the legislators that passed the Safety Act, all of those people. Whenever crime happens to them, oh, well, wait a minute. Now, oh, well, or people walking out of jail after, because you can't keep them in jail. And then they go off and hurt somebody else. Pritzker going, well, there are some things we have to change in the Safety Act. Well, you know what? I can tell you there are legislators that heard that when the girl was dumped in a garbage can up in Antioch. Legislators were told, sometimes we don't get it right. Sometimes we need to fix it. Well, then fix it. You all have the power to fix it. You could fix it without any Republican vote, but yet they still won't do it. Why? Oh, well, because then that might show them weak or whatever. But what I've found is more and more Black people that I know are disgusted with the crime nowadays, and they're disgusted with Pritzker. They're disgusted with Johnson and the city. More and more Hispanic people now. In my family, we've got Black, we've got Hispanic, we've got Puerto Rican, we've got Jewish. And it doesn't matter where you come from. You should all be disgusted. You should all be doing something against it. But, again, it goes back to everyone. Nobody wants to get involved either. So, we don't want to get involved. So
I think it needs to be pointed out, Sharon, that this was the goal. I mean, there was a story in these 2 weeks here on The Nation where the spokesperson for the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice is talking about how this the Safety Act and all the various bills that they passed are working better than anyone expected, is their wording. And talking about and basically crowing and about this, about how
it's just the opposite.
Here we go. It's going dramatically better than any of us had expected it would be. In Cook County, most people who are arrested are going free before trial. There's a 14% decline in the jail population in Cook County. There's only a third of the Sharon, hold on, let me finish. Only a third of the 25,000 people whose charges made them eligible for detention were actually sent to jail. And number of people in jail in Illinois has fallen by almost 1,900 people. There's a 40% decline in this county, a 25% decline in that county. The point is that's their goal. The goal isn't to make communities safer. The goal is to empty the jails. They want fewer people in jail. That's it. That's the only goal that they have here. And I think that's what people miss, is that if the goal was to make communities safer, then you would have a table with law enforcement, state's attorneys, criminal justice reform people, and you'd have them all at the table, and we come up with a plan for how to make sure that the communities are safe and that we're rehabilitating people, and yes, keeping them out of situations where they commit crimes and go to jail. Like, you could come up with an actual plan that accomplished all these things, but that is not the left's goal. The left's goal is not safety, it's emptying the jails. And whether it's this story I brought up from The Nation, there was another one in Chicago Reader where they're talking about how, that people who have been given life sentences are being forced to serve their life sentences, and that's a bad thing. It's like, wait, they were given life sentences. Shouldn't they have to serve it? I mean, the whole point here of the far left agenda is emptying the jails. It's a pro-criminal agenda, and that's what people don't seem to understand.
Well, and when you get that sentence, and I was an advocate for victims, when you get that sentence, that family knows that the person's supposed to be in that prison for exactly that long, then great. Like the guy who shot the two officers in McHenry, that guy got a life sentence. Technically, he got a life sentence. Who knows how long he's going to be there? Because there are other cop killers in Chicago. People killed Chicago police officers. They have already been released by Pritzker for one reason or another, because, they're old, and they're looking at, 55 is old. Okay, I'm 60. That's not old. So there's a lot of crimes I could still do at 60 years old. So not that I would, but, they just don't have enough people that, yes, they're going to sit there and complain. But when you tell them, okay, the only way we can change this is getting Republicans in. Well, now they're going to.
Now they don't actually want to work together. I mean, Jed, you faced this, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on, Collin, with your kind of assessment that there's just no appetite. All these insanity bills, they come through with zero conversation. You could get all the stakeholders at a table, come up with really good solutions that would be bipartisan. And if you could do that, the people of Illinois win. It never happens. It's behind closed doors, a very select group of people crammed through in an insane amount of minimal time. And it's designed that way to produce chaos. And the only solution, because there's no other, not solution, the only like answer I can come up with when you're like, why would they do this? You don't care about the working family. Like the average families that call the main streets of America home, if you actually valued their lives, their economic checkbook, you wouldn't be doing this stuff. You think that government is a solution. We're going to side with the criminal. We are going to provide opportunities for the quote unquote less fortunate. And we forget about the people that are actually paying the bills and providing the jobs and providing the great home environments and schools and providing the economic system that we all love and cherish and the great nation which we call home. And it is a travesty. I mean, I know I'm an elected official, so my life's a little different, but even around here, I'm on my campaign side now, but like on the state side, we're on lockdown, not a lot, but there's just safety precautions we take because you never know. Like we've created an unstable environment. My daughter goes to college in Chicago, takes mass transit, and we have to adjust the movements of our life because what should be safe is no longer safe. So we either value people or we value the criminal. And you can only do one or the other for the most part. I'm not saying don't try to rehabilitate people, but we are missing the people and we are not putting them as a priority here. And it is sad and unfortunate because people like everyone that's watching and on this podcast are paying the ultimate price.
Well, and Jed,
I'd counter you could probably find a good balance, but right now we are so imbalanced towards the criminal.
Yeah,
is what
for sure. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
And Jed, the problem is those people that are being affected, those families, they're not voting. So unless they get out and vote.
I think we talk about voting, Sharon. Part of the problem here is, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Republicans make a mistake when we harp constantly on the Safety Act. When we're constantly talking about the Safety Act instead of just safety, just crime and safety and keeping communities safe. Because when you talk about the Safety Act, then they can say, well, guess what? The Safety Act did X and not Y, and it did this and not that. It's like, okay, the problem is crime. The problem is when somebody can be arrested over 70 times before committing the heinous crime that they committed, that's the problem, not the Safety Act. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But like, just that. But the Republicans too often are like, well, the Safety Act let him out. And then Democrats get to come out to the press and say, well, actually, it wasn't the Safety Act that did it. And now we've lost it. Whereas you go talk to the average person on the street and say, this person was arrested 70 times and then ended up lighting a woman on fire because he kept being let back out. Are you okay with that? No, I'm not. But once you say, well, it was the Safety Act, you give them an out. And so Republicans, please. Yeah, if you want to use the Safety Act as an example or as part of your argument, fine. I do that too. But the overall issue is safety as the word, not the Safety Act. It's keeping families and communities and neighborhoods safe. That's what Democrats are failing to do. That's what Pritzker is failing to do. And that's what you need to be talking about. Stop so hyper-focusing on several, but essentially one piece of legislation, because that's why we're losing this issue. Focus on the broader issue and you'll have a lot more success.
Let's try and build some bridges. I know that sounds insane, but I literally just did a town hall with Representative Barbara Hernandez. And I don't know when the last time you had a town hall with a Democrat and a Republican state rep at the table in a public forum trying to find solutions.
I'm impressed.
State of Illinois. So like try to lead by example, and then you're disarming. Not that I want to like give the back strategies in my mind, but I'm trying to disarm the whole, no, they're unwilling to work. They're just going to point fingers. Like, I want to come to your table. I want to have these discussions, because if you can agree on this issue and I can agree on an issue, and that was all about the criminal, it was all about prison reform, because there are some travesties happening in the Department of Corrections and behind the scenes, and we need to right the ship there. So how can we come together on issues like that and lead by example and show the people of Illinois, hey, look what happens when we work together. Isn't that incredible?
Well, I think I don't want to take us to our next topic, but just real quick before I do it, I want to just end with this. When I travel the country and do trainings or do business in these other states, the crime in Illinois, the crime in Chicago is a joke. I mean, literally, like it's in everybody's mind. I had a conversation with somebody outside the country just a couple of weeks ago, and they made a joke about the crime when I said I was from just outside Chicago. I mean, I'll have Lane bring up in post the Babylon Bee image here from it's for you guys who can't see it. It's red and green crime scene tape, and it says Chicago kicks off holiday season by unveiling festive red and green crime scene tape. Like the idea is that it's that's how bad it is. It's a joke around the country and around the world. That's how much people know the crime is a problem in this state, and especially in the city of Chicago. And so that's something we can build on if we actually address it effectively. Don't get lost. Again, I said this whole the immigration raids, I think, pulled us off topic and pulled us off focus. And yeah, Pritzker's vulnerable on immigration, but the reality is he's even more vulnerable on crime, and we got to get back to focusing on that.
Crime is legendary in Chicago. It's just legendary.
All right, we're going to do news you can use. We'll do this pretty quickly for our panel. If you have thoughts on any of these, feel free to jump in. Just please do it fast because we're running out of time. But this section is to help our audience be aware of things you maybe didn't see in the news that you should know about. For instance, this has gotten very, very little coverage, but thanks to the center square, at least some people have been talking about it. Illinois has decoupled from the federal rules in another area, this time when it comes to no tax on tips. You heard Trump push this in his election to some success. That will not be the case on your state taxes. If you live in Illinois, if you're a tipped worker, you will still pay state taxes on those, because every time Pritzker and the Democrats say they care about working families, they're lying to you. It's not actually accurate. So if you're a tipped worker, you're right there in that working families category, but you will pay taxes on tips that could have been avoided. The state didn't have to decouple on this. They could have let you have that money tax free, but they've decided not to. So working families, just another reminder of how little Democrats actually care about you in this state.
Well, and if you remember when Trump proposed this on the campaign trail, a year and a half ago, a lot of the unions, the culinary unions and unions in that kind of world were very excited about this. They supported it. Kamala Harris desperately was like, hey, guys, I agree. I'm going to do the same thing. So it's another example of Pritzker and the Democrats being anti-union.
Well, and especially when this week Cogfoot came out and said that our revenue in the state is up and it's looking great and things are rosy. So the state's got even more money than we expected, but no, tip workers, you don't get any of that because Pritzker has other places he'd rather spend it. Next one here. We've talked about this before, but Michael noticed this, and I know some news outlets are finally starting to talk about this, that now non-citizens, undocumented, illegal immigrants, etc., all in that category are now going to be fully eligible for financial aid when it comes to college. They had been previously eligible in some areas, but now it's going to be fully eligible. What's the takeaway here? The takeaway is that's a finite pot of money. And so Illinois families who are citizens, your children, will have less access to aid in the state to go to college because some of those funds are now going to be going to non-citizens. So if you're talking to the average family, let them know. Yet again, when you talk about cost of living, Democrats just made cost of living for Illinois families even more because now they're going to have less access to college aid.
I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be some type of incentive to being an American citizen. More and more every year, apparently that's not the case. You can get financial aid for your college education. You can get free driver's licenses. You're eligible for government health care programs. So, at the end of the day, the only thing that's preventing you from being a citizen is the right to vote. But, as some people like to say, we don't even know if that's a guarantee anymore.
Maybe we should all relinquish our citizenship, go to Mexico, and then come back.
That's right. Butler's going to.
I want to see Butler in Mexico.
Butler's going to claim to be seeking asylum from Guatemala. I'll be seeking asylum from, I don't know, Albania or something, and we could just get free everything from the United States federal government. And what are they going to do? Check? We've already burned our birth certificates. Good luck, guys.
All right, next one here. Seems like Democrats and proponents kind of put the wool over Republicans' eyes on this one a couple years ago when it passed back in 2023. But if you go and buy paint starting December 1st, you will now be paying a brand new fee on that paint for a recycling program, which probably has some merit. Certainly as a Republican who actually cares about the environment, I do like the idea, but I don't like making things more expensive for working families. Yet again, here's another situation where working families are just going to pay a little more, right? Just a little bit more. But now if you buy paint in Illinois, you're going to be paying a fee on that paint. Jed, I know we were talking about this before we went on air, that when they proposed this back in 2023, the idea that they never talked about how this was actually going to cost working families. There wasn't a fee involved. So it looks like they kind of tricked everybody, huh?
Yeah, we were just talking about this, my colleagues and I, like, what the heck? Why did we vote for this? Because it literally passed with 0 no votes in the House. Everyone voted. And this just shows you've got thousands of pieces of legislation. I was with a bunch of fourth graders this week, and I said, hey, can you read, 3,300 books in 5 months? No, you can't. And that's the amount of legislation that is trying to just go through the House of Representatives every 5 months. It is insanity. And every once in a great while, you get a little hiccup like this where it's like, shoot, that should have been an easy no vote. But you start, and this is where you almost just need to be your own person, because you'll see Republican co-sponsors on it and you'll take for granted that maybe they did their homework. You can't do that because that was exactly what happened here. No fee was discussed. It had some good co-sponsors on it and it went through. When a fee increase every day is a no vote from this guy and many others like me.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to the next one here. We've got some graphs to show you, which Lane will bring up on screen. There's a graph here in Axios article that charted job growth in this country from February 1st of 2020 through October 31st of 2025. And you can see in this chart that on the left-hand side are all the metro areas with the highest job growth. And look at the states that are represented. Every single one is a red state. Now look at the right-hand side. Those are all the states with the worst, or the regions with the worst job growth. And every single one of those are in blue states. Probably not a huge surprise to anybody. And we'll talk about in the next topic how this translates to Illinois, but probably didn't shock any of you about what I just said, huh? So let's go to the next one. Let's talk about Illinois. Here's a visual here. Here's a map that Lane will bring up. Wage growth by state in the last year from 2024 to 2025. Look at that. Illinois is among the lowest in the entire country and is the lowest of all neighboring states. So Democrats keep telling you they care about working families, yet our wage growth is the worst in the whole Midwest. When you have to imagine, with all of the advantages that we have in the state of Illinois, our wage growth should be beating all of our neighbors who don't have the advantages we have. And we can't even beat Indiana. We can't even beat Wisconsin. That's how bad we are. It drives me friggin' crazy.
This is a good prelude to the email that's going to be in your inbox tomorrow morning, Collin, from Butler and I, where we are suggesting that we move the company from Inverness into Munster, Indiana. And it would be good for me because I'd be closer to the office and I wouldn't have to drive an hour to get to work. But it would also be good because apparently that means our wages would go up in comparison to the rest of the state of Illinois. So I'm thinking core strategies in Munster, Indiana could be good for all parties involved.
Except for the people who actually have to live in Munster, Indiana. But
I'm not saying we don't got to move. I'm not saying we got to live in Munster, Indiana, but apparently, they got some good things going on there for their company. So
I literally just met with a company this week that is a major employer in this area. They pay like a logistics company. They do over $100,000 a month in tolls. So that shows you like the amount of volume they're doing and the amount of employers they're putting on the ground. But they have operations in other states. And he's the owner of the company looked at me and said, I am a breath away from relocating our headquarters to either any of the states that you see on the walls, because you people, and he pointed at me, you people are making it impossible to do business here in Illinois.
Yeah, and yet I've been in those meetings where Pritzker has said to people like that, you're not leaving. That's literally their belief. They don't think they're leaving, even though time and time again, they actually do leave. Let's go to the next one here. Income inequality. Here's another visual for you to see U.S. income inequality by state, and look at that. Illinois is among the highest in the country. We are for sure the worst in the entire Midwest. We've heard Mark Batnick and a few others talk about this repeatedly. We have talked about it on this podcast. Jed can tell you, Sharon can tell you, almost every bill that passes down in Springfield has some sort of carve out that is supposed to solve this problem, that is supposed to help lower income people, communities that need help. And Republicans believe we want to help those who need help. And yet we're told if we just spend a little more money, just a little more money. And yet here's the proof. We've had it for years. It's not working. Maybe try another approach, giving them opportunities to grow generational wealth through jobs and careers and wages and growth in their communities. Maybe, just maybe, we could try another approach that could actually help these lower income communities. But hey, the Democrats' plan's working just fine. If you're in those communities, just know inequality in this state, worst in the Midwest, despite everything they tell you.
I go, Collin, with that, I have multiple times said we should have all of our programs on a scale basis. You make more money, you get a little bit taken out more. And when you get to a certain point, then you get kicked off. The problem is nobody can work because their child care will completely get kicked off if they get a quarter raise. So if you do it a little bit on that scale, you can help people. And eventually, over time, you will spend less money to get these people in the right direction.
Let's go to the next one here. Let's ding Chicago a couple times because, well, you'll hear in these topics, they do kind of deserve it here. Chicago Tribune had a great write-up on how good news is more CPS students are graduating high school, but the bad news is fewer are actually completing college, which tells you that we're graduating kids that aren't ready for college, and that's a problem when we continue to lower standards in this state and then pat ourselves on the back. The overall college completion rate for CPS alumni is 48%. The national average, 64%. Listen, it's good news that there is some good news in this data, even in this article. More enrollments in college we're seeing, more graduations is on its face. Sounds great. We want to see improvements, but this idea that we can lower our standards and it's somehow going to help people, just giving them a diploma clearly isn't actually helping them when it comes to finding a job or completing college. Why is this happening? Well, there's a IPI had a good piece. Over two out of 5 Chicago teachers are chronically absent. 43% miss at least 10 or more school days. You saw Fox 32 Chicago talk about how the DC, the feds, are now demanding the financial records from the Chicago Teachers Union because they're refusing to release those records. So maybe we can see where CTU is spending all their cash because they're clearly not spending it actually advocating for improved education for students in Chicago. All right, now that was a lot for you guys. Last one here, because I always love making Chris struggle and talk bad about his favorite city. Actually, I don't. I'm joking, but I love to tease Chris. Last one here. Traffic congestion in Chicagoland is now once again worst in the U.S. We were worst a handful of years ago. We relinquished that recently, but we are back now. We are back to being number 1 for most traffic congestion in the country. And in fact, we are number 2 in the entire world. If you live in this area, if you drive in this area, on an average, you waste 112 hours in peak traffic over the time you'd have spent in normal traffic. So no, we're not saying you spend 112 hours in traffic. You spend 112 hours more in traffic than you would on average anywhere else. That's pretty rough. I think we could all do something with that 112 hours back in our lives. Second worst in the world behind Istanbul. I think we could probably do a little better, but hey, you know, they've got 3-year construction projects on Route 90 that don't actually even widen it at all. So all you did was resurface. Now it's construction on Route 53 for 2 or 3 years. And again, you're not widening it, you're just resurfacing. So we keep doing these construction projects, which is good. We need to improve our roads. We're not actually doing anything to solve the problem. We're just keeping the same roads and resurfacing them. Maybe a broader, longer-term strategy of improving traffic congestion would be good for the working families in this region.
You know, Collin, you mentioned I-53, you mentioned I-90. I got to tell you, I think I-294 is taking the cake and is really doing the heavy lifting on these statistics because on the way to the office, it takes me about 45, 50 minutes. On the way back from the office, we're talking an hour 20, hour and a half. And I know damn well the day that Chris moves on to make millions of dollars in some other career path, or the day after that the core strategies actually moves to Munster, Indiana, that project is going to end. It's going to take me 10 minutes to go from my house to O'Hare Airport. But it won't be until I no longer have to take that drive anymore because that's the way God likes to laugh at me.
Hey, just come downstate. The traffic's fine.
He's soon to be caught dead, Butler. Thank you.
All right. Well, we kept our guests way longer than we should have. So let's go to our final segments here. Our OGs and clowns of the week. Anybody you guys want to put in here? Ideally in politics, ideally in Illinois, but there's really no rules. Have some fun with it. What do you guys got?
I want to give
after you.
I was going to give OG of the week to Patrick Windhorst. He put out a great press release related to the Safety Act and bills that some of our Republican state reps have filed to fix some of those issues, proving once again that we're the adults on this issue and Pritzker's got his head in the sand. But it seems like maybe he's looking out of his hole a little bit. Oh, maybe we need to make some changes. Well, Pritzker, we got a list for you ready to go.
I mean, he didn't actually say that. I think people were hopeful that he would have said it, but he didn't actually say he was willing to change it, sadly. What else you guys got? Jed, go ahead.
Yeah, OG of the week. I was not totally political, but kind of fun. I was at a school, 250 fourth graders, and we ran a mock committee to go to a 4-day school week. And we kind of debated it with 2 people, 2 volunteers. And believe it or not, after realizing that they would be at a disadvantage at other states and competitiveness with college and careers and opportunities, that class voted by majority vote to keep a 5-day school week, which I thought was hopeful for the future of this nation. Everyone that voted yes, I wanted to say, welcome to the Republican Party, the people that value the hard work ethic to put food on the table. But you've got, I also inadvertently, funny story, said the expression, sometimes things take 5, 6, or 7 years. And I lost the room for about 2 minutes. They just went berserk. And I'm like, okay, I'm obviously not a
6, 7.
fourth grade teacher. Yeah, totally lost. It was a lot of fun. Shout out to Yorkville 115.
Nice. What else you guys got? Chris seems excited. Go ahead.
I've got 3 clowns. First clown is the weather. Everybody's sick right now. The roads are a disaster. We got like 8 inches, 9 inches of snow over here. More snow is coming. The cold is here. This is going to be a terrible year for knocking on doors. I can already tell the snow we got, it ain't melting until March. So to all you field directors out there and precinct captains and precinct committeemen, have fun knocking on those doors and putting those signs in the yard this year because it's going to be a rough one. Number 2, Juliana Stratton. We already talked about it. If you're finishing 3rd in a poll for Senate when you're the lieutenant governor in the state with the governor is blessing, you're a clown. I don't know what your campaign team's doing. Maybe give me a call. I could probably win this race for you. Guaranteed I'll do it for you on the cheap. Collin don't gotta know nothing. And number 3, this is the main clown of the week. Main clown of the week is Frank Calabrese. Everybody's favorite political commentator or political operative or whatever the hell Clem Balanoff has him doing nowadays. He's got a beef with Samantha Steele for reasons that are beyond anybody's knowledge at this point. Samantha Steele this week who's a Cook County Board of Review commissioner. She did an interview with Chicago Tonight on WDTW, and this upset Frank to no end, so he decided to post about it. But in the post he made, he decided to use AI to change the photo from having a nice little Christmas display on the table in front of her with a nice little train and a nice little village. He changed it to bottles of wine. And the joke is that Samantha Steele's like a drunk because she got a DUI. And like everybody on Twitter like flamed him for this. And Rich Miller actually was getting into him a little bit because, you know, he was like, obviously he created like a fake news story that Samantha Steele was getting drunk on Chicago Tonight when she clearly wasn't. So, and he was calling out Chicago Tonight for bringing her on. Or it's like, you know, she's still an elected official. Shouldn't you want your elected official to do interviews? Like, we don't call out PBS for doing interviews with Pritzker. Like, we wouldn't. He's a governor of the state. They're going to do that. So, Frank Calabrese, you're the clown of the week. I don't know what you got going on Twitter. I don't know what you're doing nowadays, but it's weird, dude. Give it a rest. My OG of the week was an asterisk. Is JB Pritzker. Now you've gotten the rod. Now I'm going to give you the carrot here, Governor Pritzker. I actually really appreciate the time and effort you are putting into thinking about the assisted suicide bill. Patrick Figston had a great article that came out this week regarding Governor Pritzker's thoughts on the assisted suicide bill. Apparently, Pope Leo did actually talk to Governor Pritzker about the assisted suicide bill. So, Senator Wilcox, you were wrong about that. They did discuss that. So I appreciate Governor Pritzker actually taking the time to talk to faith leaders and other interests in the state about this bill. Now, it's with an asterisk because if he actually signs it at the end of this, is going to be a clown for, you know, teasing me and thinking he was actually going to do the right thing for once. But JB Pritzker, you are an asterisk clown of the week, OG of the week from old Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. But actually, I was kind of wondering if you bring this up, Chris. If you actually read the subtext of what he said, Pritzker put the conversation he had with the Pope about assisted suicide in the things we disagree on bucket. If you actually read what he said, I think he slipped up. I think he made a mistake and said exactly what he's going to do. He's going to sign it. I'm willing to bet you on this because I think he slipped up and said and admitted that was one of the things they talked about briefly of the things we disagree on, and then we talked about things we agree on like immigration. So I think he made a mistake actually in that, and nobody else caught it. That he admitted he's about to sign it.
Well, I'll take a look. I'll take another look at that, Colin, because if that's the case, then he's going back into the clown category.
I don't think there was ever a question of whether he was going to sign it. That bill was around in springtime, and we thought it was going to pass then, and they snuck it through at the last minute again, like they always do during veto session when nobody's paying attention.
Oh, come on now. That was sanitary food preparation, not assisted suicide.
Oh, well, that was bigger. That was the title of it. I'm like, seriously? You know,
Michael, I'm kind of surprised you didn't bring up the No Kings organizers. You had a great post internally about how they wanted people to boycott Black Friday and Cyber Monday.
That feels like it's been a long time ago. So yeah, they told people, hey, boycott Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Well, I assume these liberal these far left liberals, they're probably going to be buying Christmas presents for their family, right? So if they're not buying it on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, they're buying it at the regular price to sock it to the corporations.
Yep.
Pay full price at Walmart when you could have got it for $20 cheaper. Why not?
Yeah,
That'll show them.
That'll teach those corporations. Yeah, that's pretty funny. I got a couple OGs. Feel free to jump in if you guys still have more. But Sean Morrison, Cook County Commissioner. It's a sad day when we see that Sean has decided not to run for re-election. Thank you, Sean Morrison, for your service. This may be the end of Republican representation on the Cook County Board, which could be pretty sad to see. So, Sean, thanks for your service, and we'll see what happens with that seat. Lane's going to bring up a picture here. Laura Kotelman, good friend of the program, good friend of mine for many years. She's been sworn in as the first Republican woman to serve on the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners. She'll be one of 3 on that position. Really cool to see. Laura is one of the best people you could ever hope to meet. So congratulations to you, Laura, and I know you'll do an awesome job in that position. I got a few clowns here. Just in general, universities during Thanksgiving, there's a number of them who wanted to call out for decolonizing Thanksgiving and calling it a day of mourning, and myth-busting colonial narratives and land seizures. Decolonizing Thanksgiving in the classroom. It's a day of mourning on their website for one of these universities. Harvesting the truth on Thanksgiving myths and indigenous food systems. Maybe this is why, guys, only 33% agree that a 4-year college degree is worth the cost, down from 53% just a little over 10 years ago. Like, maybe this is a bit of the reason why. Anyways, just if we can't even have Thanksgiving anymore, we can't even celebrate Thanksgiving, then what the heck are we doing? Like, it's okay to have a few nice things. You don't have to break everything.
Will this be a bad time to do the land acknowledgement, Collin, or should we save that to the end?
Yeah, well, just save it to the end. Another clown here, Gene Kesmerick, DuPage County Clerk, has now been censured by the Democrat-run DuPage County Board. We brought her up before as a clown. She continues to be a clown. I'm going to skip this one for time. Last one here. There's an individual on Facebook, one of several, who likes to post constantly about how awful the Republican Party is, how awful certain Republicans are. And she has monetized her Facebook account. So she makes money off of all the clicks. She's the same person who made up the Starbucks Charlie Kirk story and got a whole bunch of clicks and likes and made money off of that. She's done it again here, where she attacked the Uniparty Christmas gathering, which is just the Seraphim holiday party, which he hosts every year. And a bunch of Democrats come, a bunch of Republicans come. She said, this is the Uniparty. And, when officials who claim to represent us choose to network with individuals whose policies stand in direct opposition to the values this country was built on, the message is unmistakable. They're not fighting for the people. They're aligning with those who erode the foundation of American principles. AI writes very well for her, by the way. But this whole idea that Republicans aren't even allowed to go to a Christmas party with Democrats, like, Jed, you just talked about how we pass bills down in Springfield. You actually did a town hall with a Democrat. You've got to recognize we're in the super minority down in Springfield, so you will never get anything passed unless some Democrats vote for it. So maybe it's okay to go to a freaking holiday party with them. Like, you're not selling your soul to the Democratic Party. You're not changing what you believe. You're just going to a holiday party and having a drink and shaking their hand. Like, this is how our politics used to be, that we could disagree on policy, but still have a drink afterwards. But to some, you're only pure if you never, ever, ever go near or speak to a Democrat in your life, which is, by the way, why that group never wins an election, which is, by the way, why in that county, in McHenry County, there are now fewer Republican committees than there are Democrat committeemen in deep red McHenry County, because this individual is in charge of recruiting committeemen and she's not even doing that job. But yes, go attack Republicans because they happen to show up to a holiday party with Democrats. This is why we lose. But keep in mind why people like this post this, because they make money off of the outrage. Every click, every time you go to that post, she is making money. That's why she posts this crap. She doesn't actually even care about the Republican Party, as evidenced by her performance in McHenry County. She only cares about making money off of your outrage. Know that when you read her posts. Don't play into it. That's my final clown of the week. All right, closing thoughts. We'll let our guests go last, which means, Chris, you seem very excited. Go ahead and go first.
Well, thank you all. I hope everybody enjoyed us taking a week off last week, and hope everybody enjoyed your Thanksgiving holiday. I everybody make sure to take care of yourself. Everybody's very sick right now. I'm very sick right now. I'm dealing with staff members on campaigns who are very sick right now. So make sure you take your vitamin C and you stay healthy over this holiday season. We got a lot of work to get done. You know, the work doesn't stop just because Christmas is coming up. You want to get this work done now in these first 3 weeks of December so you can actually enjoy your holiday and you're not answering emails at 9 o'clock on Christmas evening. So everybody, get your work done now. Let's sprint to the finish of the new year so that by the time we get to New Year, all we're worrying about is putting our plans in action into place. Thank you.
All right. And everybody say a prayer for Chris and his sniffles. Michael, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I just got a text from Representative Amy Alec with breaking news, I guess, that Granite City Steel was going to restart the operation of one of their blast furnaces, which is good news for our region. And thank you to President Trump for all of his work on getting this done, because it seems like when he's in office, we're firing on all cylinders. And when he's not, a lot of people are unemployed. So that's my final thoughts.
All right, Michael, coming in a little stronger this week. Well done. Sharon, thanks for being with us. Your final thoughts.
Just, I wanted to thank Jed, because I have non-political friends that send me your podcasts all the time. So you're getting out there, and I'm like, how the heck do they know about Jed? So you should, kudos to you for that, and keep it up.
All right. Sharon doesn't even give me those kinds of kudos. So
No,
Jed, maybe that's why you're getting the final word, because you're doing a good job. Your final thoughts.
No, I appreciate it. Great being here. You know, I feel like I know I'm preaching to the choir, but we can win. Like there's hope in the state, and we can even win statewide elections. Like, I don't want people to lose hope. And we just remind everyone, and I know everyone listening probably knows this, but the independent voter wants us to work together. Springfield is designed for the complete opposite. The Democrat House literally doesn't call a bill from their party unless they have 60 votes from their own caucus. So there is you need 60 votes to pass the bill. Zero incentive for anyone on that side of the aisle to build any relationships with a Republican. Is that who you want leading your family? Or do you want collaboration and open-mindedness so that, again, everyone can win? But that's my little angst for the day.
Nice. Well, and I think the reality is, we've talked about it repeatedly on this podcast. It's why we're so frustrated, because there is huge opportunity. We can do so much better in this state. If we couldn't, many of us would have left by now. There is opportunity here. We can win. There's just a lot of things we got to do better. We got to put in the work and improve, but there is opportunity. We can win. And let's leave it on that. Good news, happiness to end our episode. I like it. So thanks, Jed. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Michael and Chris. Of course, as always, thank you to our producer, Lane Davis. We will be back next week. I believe we're going to try to take a few weeks off in December, so we'll see what happens, but we'll be back in your inbox in the next week or two here for the Smoke-Filled Room. We'll catch you then.